webinar series at SFL. If you're new to SFL and just came for Jeffrey Tucker, which I understand, Students for Liberty is a international nonprofit student-led organization. We seek to provide resources and support for all sorts of student liberty groups on campuses. I want to show you around the website a little bit. First, our webinar series, which is what you're a part of now. Hopefully you've seen this page. You can see past webinars and find out about the upcoming webinars on this page. I want to urge you all, if you're a student, to apply for the Liberty Fund Symposia. You can find more about it on our website. It's a really awesome opportunity for anyone who really wants to get more involved in learning the philosophies of liberty. And of course, our International Students for Liberty Conference is scheduled for Valentine's Day weekend, where you can show your love of liberty in the best way possible by having fun with over 1,000 other liberty-loving students. And of course, the Campus Coordinator Program, that's what I'm doing, is an awesome opportunity if you want to become a better leader on your campus and help with some really awesome projects with SFL. Without further ado, I will introduce Mr. Tucker. Jeffrey Tucker serves as a Distinguished Fellow of the Foundation for Economic Education, Executive Director or Executive Editor of Laissez, Faire books, and Research Fellow of the Action Institute. He's the founder of the Cryptocurrency Conference, serves as an economic consultant to the popular podcast Let's Talk Bitcoin, and writes a fortnightly column for The Freeman and Crisis magazine. He's the author of Bourbon for Breakfast, It's a Jetsons World, and A Beautiful Anarchy, and thousands of articles, introductions, and prefaces. Following his 15 years as editor and builder of the website Mises.org, he now curates and writes editorial introductions to the product offerings for the Laissez Faire Club, and is also the CEO of a new startup, Liberty.me. Jeffrey, if you are ready to go, we're ready to hear you.
Fantastic. Let's see. 2 buttons to click. Does it work?
Can't see you yet.
Oh, come on. How about now?
It's working for me.
Okay. How about you? Zoe?
I still can't see you. I'm not sure why. Oh, I can see you now.
Okay. Well, then I think we should begin. First of all, thank you for that very nice introduction, which was interesting. It's always interesting to hear about your past stuff. Think about your future stuff. My future stuff is particularly alarming to me today because I don't know how to put this, but it's unbelievable that I'm here actually talking to you because I felt like I risked life and limb today. And I'm not going to go into any more details why. Some of you listening know what happened. Everyone will discover what happened today next week. So I'm just going to kind of keep that under wraps and move on here. So we've got the exciting topic of entrepreneurship, and this is a topic that defines our times. It's changing our world in dramatic and radical ways because essentially the world we live in today is a very different one from 10 years ago. And I think we can be pretty sure that the world of 10 years from now is going to be very different from the one today. The mover in this whole dramatic shake-up of civilization is not the state. It is not politicians. It's not bureaucracies. Although they talk about all the glorious things they're doing for us, actually aren't doing anything but enforcing, trying to sustain the old world. Meanwhile, the new world is being recreated all around us in spectacular ways that are a relentless surprise and constantly dazzle us. And it's happening all very, very quickly, but in a civilizational sense. I mean, the digital revolution that's taking place right now, it's going at a much faster pace than the Industrial Revolution ever did. But somehow, I don't know why this is, we're not entirely aware of it for some reason, even though every day we log on to our computers and we discover new things, we find the new updates, we download the newest apps, we're obsessed with whatever's new and whatever's spectacular. And yet we take it all for granted, and I don't think we should. We need to understand that this is definitely a product of a particular kind of institution. It's entrepreneurship working within the context of a market economy and with all the institutions that are associated with the market economy, which are bestowing on humanity incredible benevolent blessings every day that are transforming our world. So I had a funny conversation today. I'm just going to read it to you because I typed it out because I found it absurd in light of what's taking place tonight. So I got a note. A gentleman writes to me, Jeffrey, I know YouTube on Bitcoin needs to go viral. Can you tweet it? I replied, done. Also posted on my FB wall. He writes, it didn't turn up on my feed. Can you repost or retweet our post? I said, sure. I like the section on the blockchain. Did you send to the Bitcoin subreddit? He replied, yes. Can you do a hangout later? And I said, no, I'm in a live video seminar with SFL broadcasting from my laptop. Cool. Please PM me when it is over. This, probably every one of you understood everything that I just said. But if you think about it, no one alive 10 years ago would have made any sense of any word of that exchange. It would have made no sense whatsoever. Our vocabulary has gone through this radical upheaval. We talk in languages that would have been incomprehensible just 10 years ago because none of these technologies even existed, and yet they're just integral to our lives. We live and breathe them all the time. The irony just strikes me, just how embedded we are as a people in an entrepreneurial culture, despite everything, despite 100 years of Leviathan despotism and impositions and regulations and things that have tried to lock down society and stop it from changing and embed us in a pre-programmed, regimented culture, a kind of prison-like environment. It hasn't worked. I mean, essentially humanity has broken free. We found the workaround in so many ways, and spectacular worlds are emerging before our eyes. And it's the most exciting time to be alive, essentially, ever. So you should be very happy about that and be aware of the forces that are driving it. And in particular, I think you should be aware of the motivations behind the entrepreneurial drive to reinvent the world, to disrupt the old, and to give us glorious new things that serve us every day. So it's funny. I'm sure you've all had this experience too, but I become very aware of this, like ever more, when I visit my past. So just a few weeks ago, I went into my alma mater, and I'm sure you like to do this, right? You like to go back to the old schools and talk to your professors and present yourself and tell them about all your wonderful accomplishments and things like that. So I went to an old history professor of mine who seemed rather bored, sitting at his desk. And I walked in. He said, "Oh, my goodness, Jeffrey, great to see you." And I said, "Well, it's wonderful to see you." And maybe we had about 20 seconds of pleasantries. And I couldn't wait to ask him a question because when I was last visiting with him, he was busy entering all the books he had in his personal library on floppy disks, one entry at a time. I'm not even sure they were floppy disks. I think they were tapes, actually. I think that maybe this is a very early iteration of computer technology that's typing them on tapes that would sort of roll up and down. And I said, "So, did you ever finish that project, and whatever happened to it, and where is it now?" And he laughed uproariously because he remembered doing this. And he said that he was obsessed with this, when it first came out, because he was so excited about computers. But that he transferred from the tapes to the floppy disk, to CDs, and then eventually tried to put them in the cloud. But then the technology became so advanced that there was a file transformation problem at some point, and then he decided the whole thing was ridiculous and pointless. That he could find out anything he wanted to about any book ever with a couple of clicks, and actually he didn't really care about the books that he had on his shelf. Anyway, they were just taking up space, and he just uses them as furniture anyway, but he reads all of his books online. So, which is a conventional story, right? And this is just since I was in school. And so we were laughing about this. And so next thing you know, he started talking about technology. And I said, well, what's your impression of this? And he said, well, I like that. And, would you use Mac? No. I buy Windows and I hack it and install it in Ubuntu, program. I said, well, don't you find that a bit fussy because you can't run this program or that? Anyway, we had one of these conversations that all of us have had, I guess. And it lasted about an hour of this kind of tech prattle, And I finally looked at my watch and I said, listen, I've got to go. And he said, well, listen, it's been, great to visit with you and great to see you. I said, it's lovely to see you too. And, we'll catch up next time. We walked away. And as I was walking away, I thought, it's a little strange. He's a professor of history, right? I mean, shouldn't we be talking about, history and big ideas and, that sort of thing, the coolest new history books or whatever. I mean, shouldn't I be picking his brain for that? That wasn't what he was interested in talking about, and quite frankly, it wasn't what I was interested in talking. We just wanted to talk about technology. This is, I think, what's funny to me is that entrepreneurship and innovation and technology are so defining our epoch that they consume us entirely, and I think that's good. I think it's right because it's the exciting thing. We're seeing the world go through this enormous process of disruption, throwing out the old and introducing glorious new surprises every day. And we love to talk about it because it's spectacular, it's new. I always think about this. For like 50,000 years, humanity was more or less stuck in a state of no growth. We died young. We spent most of our lives looking for food. We were grateful when we had a cave. And that was pretty much it. And then all of life began to change. Sometime in the late Middle Ages, we began to ramp up and see glorious things start to happen in the 19th century. By the late 19th century, we started to see, a new world dawn of peace and prosperity and beauty, and long lives, and infant mortality collapsed. And we began to imagine a new future that was actually possible, made possible by institutions like capital accumulation and free association and global trade and liberalism in the old sense, in the best sense, and humanity really began to flourish as never before. Then we went through 100 years of a very strange paradigm in which many people were convinced that the answer to all of humanity's problems was just to put the government in charge of it. That experiment was a tremendous calamity, no matter how you look at it, whether it's world war or economic planning, which has been a disaster in every single way. Central banking, nationalization of money, nationalization of communications, cultural controls, prohibition, you name it. It was funny, I was just today drinking a glass of champagne at noon, which I shouldn't have done, but I did anyway. And it struck me how strange it would have been to be alive during Prohibition and be around for New Year's Eve. Like, what did people drink? I mean, the government said you're not supposed to drink anything on New Year's Eve. That's a very strange institution that would have come up with a law such that it illustrates a kind of insanity of state control. In any case, the whole thing is crumbling every day and has been for the last 10 years. And it went on fast forward and starting in 1995 with the opening of this glorious world called the Internet, which is really a vast piece of real estate that allows us to play and experiment and have fun and do trial and error and unleash human imagination as no tool in the history of the world. It's breaking down barriers, breaking down borders between states, connecting us as individuals, and eliminating the relevance of this thing called the nation state that somebody invented some long time ago, which is now being dissipated, wiped out, and made a tremendous anachronism through this institution of entrepreneurship. So what I would like to do is take you through what I consider to be the 10, I guess you could say, key features of entrepreneurship that are not normally understood, not normally recognized. And I glean them all, not from a textbook, although there are many great books on this. If you ever want to study the institution of entrepreneurship and compare it to the mainstream literature. I mean, look up the works of Israel Kirzner, whose amazing literary works are being republished by the Liberty Fund right now. I'm so excited about that because for some horrible reason they've been bound up in copyright and have been less accessible than they should have been. But now, thank goodness to the Liberty Fund, they're coming out with physical editions and EPUB editions and posting the works of the great Israel Kirzner online. Who, you know, an economist really should get the Nobel Prize for all he's done. I mean, entrepreneurship defines our age. Why don't we have a Nobel Prize recognizing one great thinker who has dedicated his life to studying this institution? I don't know. But the point is that I got these 10 items by listening obsessively to one of my favorite websites. It's called meetinnovators.com. And this website's really cool because all it does is it just interviews people who've started up companies that have become big enough to become noticed, like you know, the founder of CD Baby, you know, and you know, a new cool cosmetics company that seems to have made a splash, or an online shoe distributor, whatever. It's one guy who calls up the founders, and he does hour-long interviews with these people, and it's just so fascinating to hear their perspective on the world. I mean, we're talking about people here, a very special breed, who see the world as it is and are just radically dissatisfied with it. They go, you know, something's really missing, and I'm going to take steps to cause it to change. That's a kind of a big deal. I mean, most people go through life just accepting the world as it is. The entrepreneur looks out and says, something's not right. There are unmet needs. There's something wrong. There's people who want to do something, who want a service, that want a good, and nobody else seems to be providing it. So I will take it upon myself to take the personal risks and school myself in everything I need to know about this subject and see what I can do about making the world a better place by making a change. That's an extraordinary thing to do. I mean, to create something out of nothing is an act of creation normally ascribed to God. And yet, in the market economy, we see real people, everyday regular people, doing this all of the time, making the world a new place for all of us, not for themselves so much, but for humanity. And it's a beautiful thing to see, and it's fun to listen to interviews with these innovators because you discover that almost everything people think about them turns out to be wrong. So I would like to discuss those. The very first point is that you discover, by listening to real entrepreneurs talk, that business seems to always start not with the desire just to make money, but the desire to do something wonderful. This is so contrary to the media caricature, and it's so contrary to everything you read in the literature. But typically a person doesn't start being an entrepreneur by beginning with this a kind of deep-seated desire to get rich. I mean, like, I'm poor and I'm greedy, and so I'm going to start a business so that I can become wealthy. That's not usually the motivation. The motivation is to do something spectacular. First, to meet a personal need. I want to publish my CD and make my music available. I don't like the cosmetics I'm using. I think I can do better. There's a product that I really need and I can't find it, so I'm just going to make it. So it's a desire to do something, and not just for yourself, but for other people. So there's a sort of an other directedness to the driving force. So where do profits fit into this? Well, in the first place, most entrepreneurs don't profit. The overwhelming majority of them lose and don't mind losing, actually. I wonder if you've ever heard the term serial entrepreneur. It's a very interesting term. These are people who kind of get addicted to the idea of creating new things. And quite often, most of their projects actually fail. And then every once in a while, they keep taking risks and risks and risks, and then eventually one takes off and makes them a genius. All the rest of the time they're a fool, and then suddenly they're a genius. But this is the impulse of the serial entrepreneur, and it's not really about, the motivation is not money. The motivation is to make a dent in the universe, almost universally. I mean, we talk to great entrepreneurs, that's all they talk about. They don't talk about, yeah, we made a lot of money, we made a lot more money. No, it's not the way they talk. They talk about the products they made. They talk about the services, and they talk about the challenges, and about meeting the consumer needs and the technological issues and the risks, and this is what they talk about. It's not so much about money. So where does profits come into this? Well, the profitability of an entrepreneurial venture works as a kind of a sign and a seal of a job well done. It's the signal, it's the go light. It says, you can keep going. Or the red light, it's time for you to stop. You're doing something wrong. So it's a tool of calculation. It's the thing that allows you to discern whether or not you're on the right track or not. It's a signaling mechanism more than a motivating tool. So I get a little bit annoyed, actually, that even market advocates talk about, what's the term, like the phrase, the profit motive. Okay, I have no problem with that. If somebody wants, motivated by profits, that's great. But I'm just saying that the motivation of most entrepreneurs in the real world is higher. It's more elaborate. It's more spiritual. It's dreamy. It's like faith-based, really. It's about working out some dream that they have that they want to see become reality. The profits and the calculation and the tools of economics just are the framework that define whether or not what you're doing is a success or a failure. And I would suggest to you this is almost universally true. So I get very upset when I hear people talking about greed. I mean, it's absurd. It's the dream the entrepreneurs are really chasing, not the money. Oh, the other thing is that as you listen to, this is number 2, most people will tell you a million reasons why you will fail. And this is a fascinating thing as you listen to these interviews. Every entrepreneur is a little bit scared going into something, a little apprehensive, like, why do I think that I know better than everybody else? Why is it that I believe that I've got a product or a service that I can offer the world and I can accomplish this when nobody else seems to have done it? Am I crazy? Am I missing something? So they go talk to their friends. I would like to do this wonderful thing. I'd like to start a new social media site. I'd like a new service that allows people to have instantaneous communications with an unending stream of links that connect us by interest. I want to start a video calling service that will allow anybody to talk to anybody else using a cell phone. Whatever the thing happens to be. I want to start a local cupcake restaurant, whatever. When they talk to their friends are almost always wanting them not to do it. This is typically what happens. They're almost always saying, that's not going to work. People don't want that, actually. It's too expensive. The taxes are too egregious. You'll probably fail. You actually don't have the capital to do this. You don't want to accept investor capital because you'll hate your investors. Non-entrepreneurs come up with a million reasons why the entrepreneur is going to fail. And so they have all gone through this kind of questioning stage, like, gosh, could I really be right? But they can't get it out of their heads, the fact that they might be right, that the world can be improved, that something spectacular can happen, and that they have a really good idea. So they tend to go alone. They end up being, departing from their friends and going, thanks for the warning. I think that's a very interesting point. I'll keep it in mind. I'll be cautious, but I have to take this risk. I have to do something here. And it's a little funny the way this works, because they all want to do market research to discover if their idea is going to work. The problem is that anything that's really going to be profitable, that's really going to change the world, probably doesn't currently exist. So it's hard to look for models. If you're planning to do something new and you want to know if it's going to work, you can't actually look to existing models anywhere because you're actually trying something completely new. So in the end, you can do all the market research you want, you can do all the consumer surveys you want, but in the end, you know, you're just going to have to throw yourself into it and defy everybody's expectations all around you. And the other thing that people will always tell the entrepreneur, why don't you get a regular job like everybody else? Why are you so crazy? I mean, why don't you just be happy like everybody else, just punching the clock or getting a nice W-2 secure paycheck and living off your employer's health care? I mean, it's a scary world out there, really. You don't want to leave the tower. You just stay where you are. It's much safer. You'll be happier in the end. But the entrepreneur goes to his desk and sits there and thinks, you know, I'm just not happy here. I have to do something else. So he or she goes out on his or her own. Number 3, all businesses face the universal terror of uncertainty of the future. This is a very interesting point. It turns out that no matter how many calculators you get, no matter how many computers you run, no matter how much you look at the charts, no matter how much data of history you've accumulated, there simply is no way to predict what's going to happen in the future. It's like we live in a world where backwards is absolutely certain. We know everything that's already happened, and we believe we know why everything has already happened. We can make sense of everything. It's all data, and we can put it in its place, and we can systematize it and make up theories about why this happened and what caused this. But that only works up to this slice of moment in time. Right now is when our certainty ends. From here forward, because we know the time goes forward, we know very little. It's all dark. It's all cloudy. It's all mysterious. And anything can happen. Yes, there are physical laws. There are economic laws that govern things. But consumer choice, consumer taste, resource availability, there's too many variables in the world that are constantly in operation to give us really a sense of what the future is. So it's absolutely terrifying. And if you think about it, it's all guesswork. It really is all guesswork. You can make forecasts, but in the end, humanity is fickle and unpredictable. And this is an interesting point to me because people always demonize big business. They say, oh, they have an unfair advantage over small business. But you know what? Uncertainty afflicts everyone. I don't care if you're Microsoft or you know, the biggest company in the world, or the little lemonade stand that plans to open up this Sunday to sell lemonade down at the corner. All businesses face exactly that same problem. The past is really clear, it's really obvious, and we can make up every theory we want to about it, but the future is always radically uncertain. And it's that uncertainty that kind of levels the playing field for everybody. That's what allows the small businesses to overthrow the big businesses because they make better guesses about what people want and about what the future consists of. And any business can be brought down, even the biggest one, provided it's not getting some gigantic government bailout, can be brought down by misguessing, misforecasting in the future. And by the way, this never stops. It must go on every single day. Every choice of inventory, every marketing decision you make, how much you spend on advertising, employees, new products and development, the uncertainty, it's always guesswork. There's always surprise, there's always trial and error, and it never ends. And you know, what's funny also is that really great entrepreneurs don't entirely mind this. This is the way they roll. They're happy to go to bed at night knowing that there's lots of things they don't know, and that tomorrow there's a lot of new things they'll discover. They'll make a lot of mistakes, and they'll make a lot of correct guesses. And it's just a matter of kind of constantly working this thing out. I've compared it in my own thinking because I jumped into the for-profit world about 2 years ago, and I realized I came up with a metaphor in my own mind. Sometimes I felt like I was rock climbing with a blindfold on. So you find the rocks, and once you find it, you have a sense of certainty. But you don't know where the next rock is, and you keep having to reach for it, and then you find it, and you have a sense of certainty. You have to remember the old one was, and put your foot there, and so on and so on. But it's always a matter of grasping and looking. Another way to think about uncertainty is maybe think of a big, big castle, a glorious castle that's completely dark. You have no map, and you have no clue where the light switches are, or where the rooms are, or where the hallways are, or anything. All you know is that it's a magnificent place, and you're going through it. So at every step, you're having to feel against the walls, and you try to discern patterns. But the light switches are in random places, and every time you find one, the light turns on, and it's beautiful. But then you have to keep pushing on, and then it becomes dark again, and you don't know where the turns are. Are they left? Are they right? You know, entrepreneurship is like navigating this castle that's dark until you find the light switches and turn them on. Okay, number 4. See, I'm burning through time here. Number 4, you can't really know the market until you test the market. And this is something that I've listened to that you get from these interviews and from talking to real-life entrepreneurs. Surveys don't really work. Why don't they work? Consumer surveys are fine. They can give you some sense of things. But why don't they provide you a clear roadmap? And the reason is that the only way you can really succeed in business and through entrepreneurship is by offering a product or a service that causes people to feel a sense of motivation to give up their own property in exchange for yours, and to do so under the belief that they are going to benefit, that they're going to come out ahead on net in the future. And that's a big decision. It's rooted in reality, right? This isn't about surveys. It's not about public opinion polls, like politics and it's idiotic polls that they're constantly taking that mean absolutely nothing because nobody's really got skin in the game. Sir, do you think that healthcare ought to be, best quality healthcare ought to be available to you and everyone really forever at like zero price, regardless of pre-existing condition? Yeah. Yeah, it sounds right to me. Yeah, I'll go along with that. You know, that's good. Well, great. I'll put you down, you know, as one in favor of universal healthcare, right? That's the way it works. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing because I'm not actually expending any resources in the course of this. So, you know, political surveys are essentially meaningless because people don't have skin in the game. They're not actually acting with real property to make any real decisions involving foregoing some choices for others. And until you test the market, you will never really know whether or not that's going to happen. You think you know, and then it turns out you don't know. And many times, you'll find that entrepreneurs are astounded at their own successes. They didn't expect it to go as well. Everything's clear in retrospect. Nothing's certain about the future. Every success seems like a no-brainer. Of course, everybody wants to buy books online, right? I mean, of course. Amazon worked. Everyone wants to buy a book online. Not really. I remember when Amazon came out, everybody was making fun of it. In the early days, David Broder wrote a column for the Washington Post and said, this is the stupidest business idea I've ever heard, Amazon. This is never going to work. And then he went on as a Washington Post editorialist, of course, therefore having massive brilliance and wisdom about all matters of business. He said, it can't work because, you know, anybody can start another site called like Amazon 2 or Amazon and, you know, do exactly the same thing. And Amazon will never be able to get a foothold in the market because anything it does well, it'll just be copied. And the profits will go away. So that alone is proof that Amazon.com will never work. And by the way, isn't it so true? I mean, have you noticed this? I mean, we've lived through 20 years of this nonsense. Like, public opinion and the media culture is constantly debunking every single new digital startup, no matter what it is. Oh, but that's just idiotic. That's never going to work. But that's stupid. This is just another bubble. And, you know, and yet, you know, internet startups keep blowing people away, you know, with amazing power to transform the world. And yet they keep being put down, by everybody. The Twitter IPO the other day. I mean, there was just like universal jeers, ha, 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 this is the dumbest thing ever. How can people be so stupid to believe this company is valued at such a high level? It surely can't be. Tweets are just essentially useless prattle online. Well, how many years do we have to get into the digital age before we begin to realize that information is the single most valuable commodity in the world? Hayek said it's more valuable than all physical capital on the planet. Information is more valuable than all physical capital on the planet. And of course, digital age unleashed it, and yet we still somehow can't reconcile ourselves to this. Okay, so the point is you never really know until you try, because it's only when you try that the real test takes place. And by the way, this contrasts with politics. You ever notice this? In politics, there's no test. Ever. There's not even a standard by which we're able to test any programs. So, we'll have a new jobs program that comes out, and it's like, oh, well, we're going to create lots of new jobs. And we pass some gigantic $10 billion bill. Everybody celebrates, and there's photo ops of the president, and congressional leaders behind him, and everybody's congratulating themselves. And then it turns out, 5 or 10 years later, some one journalist, probably James Bovard or somebody wonderful like that, actually looks into it and finds out the whole thing is a hoax and a scam, it didn't work, and all the money was squandered or whatever. But there's no test. I mean, where's the accountability? I mean, the people that promised that the program would do something really well have moved on to other things, or they're out of office and nobody pays attention anymore. So there's really there's no test in politics. This is one reason I don't favor any political solutions essentially for anything. And this goes even for gigantic problems like things like global warming. I mean, how absurd. So we're going to pretend as if politicians and bureaucrats can predict the weather 40, 50 years in advance, and they can't even predict the budget 2 years from now. And they're going to push all the right buttons and cause all the right things to happen to link the cause and effect in the world to stop global warming. And if it doesn't work, how are we going to know? If it does work, how will we know? Will we really ever be able to discern what was the relationship between the legislation and the outcome? And what if we could actually prove that the whole thing was a calamity that dismantled industrial civilization and did nothing to help the problem of global climate change? What happens then? Will we be able to reverse the process? No, absolutely not. Will we ever get rid of the legislation? No, nothing ever goes away in the world of politics. So my point is that the world of business and entrepreneurship is radically different. It's a completely different world, total accountability. Now I've got to move fast because I'm tragically almost out of time, only halfway through my stuff. So I'm just going to move fast. Point number 5, all entrepreneurs are maniacally focused on serving others. This contradicts all conventional wisdom that business is mainly self-interested. This can't be true because the whole direction of business is directed towards finding out the interests and desires and motivations of others. It's the only path to success in the long term. So business people actually are rather slavish about extracting information from the community. I mean, these people are just radically other-directed, not selfish, but wildly interested in what everybody else cares about, because it's how you make money in this world. It's how you become a success. It's the consumer who is king and the entrepreneur who serves. Number 6, a very interesting point that every one of these people said that every business needs both dreamers like themselves. The entrepreneur is a dreamer, and an accountant. The accountant is the one that always gives the bad news. And one doesn't work without the other. Accountants alone don't do anything but just take account of what currently exists. They need the dreamers to be edgy, to take the risks, to imagine the future. But the dreamer without the accountant is basically a fool squandering money and won't last very long. So you need both. Number 7, don't ever try to start from scratch. Every great entrepreneur looks around, finds existing services, and extracts information from other examples of success and failure and tries to improve them just on the margin. No one creates something entirely new. All new great things are based on a model that currently exists. This is the history of inventions. It takes place on the margin. So you don't have to be just completely spectacular. I mean, like in my own case, let me just give a quick example. So I did a cryptocurrency conference well, it was just in October. There wasn't a conference like that exist anywhere in the Southeast. I felt like we needed one. It was a risk. Got the hotel, put up the money, sent out the invitations, built the website. Okay, it worked. It was great. But I had a model in mind, right? I mean, it's brand new for the Southeast, and it was great, and it was thrilling. It was a real kick for me to start something totally new. I mean, look, that conference didn't exist. Something did exist. It was great, great success. But I had other models, right? I saw that one took place in San Jose. There was great success. There was another in Toronto. There was one in London. So I'm able to see other examples of success. It doesn't prove that what I was trying to do was going to work. It's a different location, much less funding, but I'm building on something that already exists and creating something new from that. So don't try to start from scratch. None of these people really do. Great business people steal ideas, as Steve Jobs once said, before he began to impose IP on everybody else. But that was back in the good days. Number 8, no matter how digital the service is or the product is, success only comes peer-to-peer. And the internet tempts entrepreneurs to believe that is serving the great community of ones and zeros. But in the end, digital commerce really is about individuals. I read a story recently about Jeff Bezos at Amazon, and how he was like obsessive with consumer responses to everything that came in, and he wanted everyone 100% happy all the time, especially in the digital age. You know, it hasn't detached us, as people say, from each other. In fact, it's linked us even more close to each other, so business can contact people much more closely. Number 9, enterprise is an incredible, grueling amount of work. The 40-hour work week, the 8-hour day, forget it. You know, it's 18 hours a day. It's obsessive. It's all in. There is no time off ever. You are totally invested. There's nothing that takes a priority, especially in the startup period. There's a wild fanaticism associated with this kind of thing, and maybe that's also why it's so rare. They know their odds are not in their favor, and that if they're going to overcome them, they've got to do something amazing. And 10, this is my final point. I can't believe I'm getting to my 10th point without actually having talked about Bitcoin. Actually, there's a lot more I'd like to talk about. Just going to close this out soon. You never win. There is no final victory in the world of entrepreneurship. You never just finally cross that finish line and say, I'm home free. It's a process. It's unrelenting. The world is constantly changing. The competitors are constantly on your tail, copying you, learning from your successes, duplicating and improving on what you've done. So you must never rest. It's exhausting, it's wonderful, it's thrilling, it's an adventure. It takes courage and tremendous stamina. And you have to be happy with just the fact that you've won that day. That day was a good day, and tomorrow may be a bad day. But the second you rest on your laurels, you will be eaten alive. It's a wonderful life. It's a great adventure. Economics is a great adventure. The life of an entrepreneur is more spectacular than any warrior, certainly any general in wartime or any of the rest of these statesmen who are so popular, whose faces be carved into mountains in worship. But meanwhile, the people who are really transforming our world today, the entrepreneurial class, and they're doing it in more ways than we can possibly count. Breaking down old communication systems, giving us new ones. Breaking down old systems of delivering on everything from restaurants to taxi cabs to phone calls to energy provision, to remaking the world, wiping out the old failures of the 20th century of public sector provision and regimentation and control, and giving us new worlds of freedom. And it's they who are doing it, not the people we elect to office, but the people who surprise us by being amazing every single day of the year. So thank you very much. I'm glad to take questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Participants and attendees, you will see a questions box somewhere on the side of your screen. If you want to send me questions, I will field them to Mr. Tucker, and I look forward to seeing what you have to say. Thank you so much for being with us, Jeff. That was really wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really, of course, I love SFL. I've been speaking at now three or four events just in the fall, and it's just lifted my spirits just to be at SFL events. It's just been wonderful in so many ways. The SFL has, inspired my own startup that I'm starting with this publishing solution and communications network, Liberty.me. So I would encourage everybody who's listening to go to that site, and I've got a special link for SFL because of my deep affection for this institution and all that you're doing, and I'd love to roll you in as a beta tester.
Great. Well, we've got some questions rolling in. First one from Andy Bratton. He says, are there any particular areas of industry or technology that you think any would-be inventors among us ought to pursue that would help advance liberty more than any others? Or is every creative endeavor helping towards that?
So that's a really great question. Yes, I think it's true that every creative endeavor creates an element of liberty and gives us a little advantage in life, right? I mean, everything is spectacular. Whether you're starting a local ballet studio, I mean, how glorious is that? I mean, you're teaching a whole new generation the beautiful classical art of ballet. I mean, you've made the world a more beautiful place with things like this. Or just, I don't know, just serving consumers is just such a gratifying thing to do. I mean, just making other people happy. That's what business is all about, right? Being excellent and making other people happy. That's fabulous. But, of course, I have to name what to me would be the great thing for human liberty, would be to do something about the problem of money. It was nationalized 100 years ago, and it is terrible. All national monetary institutions are anachronistic, expensive, useless, exclusionary of the poor around the world, and are tyrannical and despotic and fuel governments and debt and make business cycles, and it's like terrible, right? So to me, the great entrepreneurial innovation of our time, came about in 2009 with Satoshi Nakamoto's protocol that he gave out on a free form, and it's an internet cash called Bitcoin that works peer-to-peer using cryptography. It allows us to exchange real property with real scarce resources. I mean, it's just an extraordinary innovation. But the point is that the Bitcoin protocol, it's just that, it's a protocol. It needs an infrastructure. We're seeing that being created every single day, with new wallet services and smart contract services and peer-to-peer exchanges and things going on all over the world. And there are many, many great entrepreneurs involved in this space right now. I mean, we're talking about reinventing money. I mean, stopping 100 years of frozen, terrible lack of innovation in an institution that constitutes half of every economic transaction in the world, right? I mean, it's terrible what they did. And Bitcoin is reinventing this whole thing and detaching us gradually. It offers up the hope that we can actually reinvent money on a market basis. So this is a sector that is so incredibly ripe for innovation. So if you're a code-slinging geek, I think I can't even imagine a better place to be. Or if you want to go to look at some of these wonderful companies like BitPay or Coinbase, these are brilliant companies that are forging a beautiful new future for us. I never believed that in my lifetime I would see anything like this. I mean, I never imagined that something like this would be possible. Entrepreneurship is real. This is not just theory. It's not just stuff you read about in textbooks. Within the institution of entrepreneurship, we see the ability to reimagine and recreate everything, to fix every injustice, to include every excluded person, to make every human soul on the planet a valuable economic unit to everyone else. This is a beautiful vision. This is what entrepreneurs are accomplishing right now. And Bitcoin convinces me essentially that anything is possible.
Wonderful. I hope that answered your question, Andy. I've got a question from Patrick Hatton. Along the lines of uncertainty when starting a business, what sort of financial statistics would investors look for? He says he's been pouring through old economic data, but it's outdated for forecasting as soon as it's collected and put out. How important is this?
Well, it's always a risk. I remember when YouTube was burning through cash in the old days, long before they were actually purchased. What a lot of startups do is they try to be as amazing as possible with however limited resources they have. And then when they can demonstrate to possible investors that they're getting attention, that people are using their service, that they've met a niche, and that things are really happening, that they're starting to see some energy in action, then they can extract new funding. It's the first round of funding that's the hard one. The second and third and fourth, that comes a lot easier because you've got a track record. If you can come up with a really great idea, the best thing to do is use your own funding, of course. I mean, I've talked to so many kids at the SFL events that I've been at who work regular jobs in the day, and then they get together with their friends in the evenings and nights and weekends and work on their startup. And they live 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 in small spaces and save up all their money and living off ramen noodles and work on their great idea. This is really the best way, but no matter what happens in the early days, it's going to be lean, it's going to be mean, and you're going to be pouring in a ton of yourself, getting nothing in return for a very long time. Once things begin to move, once you move the needle a little bit, things become a lot easier. And of course, the goal of many startups nowadays is to be purchased by somebody else. Of course, that's the idea. YouTube went right up to the edge. I was following their financials, day by day until they were bought by Google, and it was just absolutely terrifying. It was just screamingly horrifying, the amount of money that they were going through, and everybody was saying it was, the biggest disaster. And then it just seemed like right on the edge of the cliff, Google bought them, and they all became super rich. So it's, there's no getting around it. It's a terrifying risk, and it's a lot of work.
Wonderful. Just as a heads up, we're probably going to wrap it up at about 9:10 tonight, so we've probably got time for 2 more questions. If any of you attendees have any last questions, if you'll send them in. I have a question from Jeff Peterson, who asks, apparently you know Jeff. He says, regarding advocating for a stateless society, would you say that economics is a stronger talking point or morals? Because both are important, but which would you say is more important?
Oh, yes, the village anarchist speaks up, right? By the way, I have an anarchist meetup every week. Tonight I had a man come up to me. He's always advocated limited as a kid. Nice boy. And he came up to me and said, Jeffrey, you've convinced me I'm an anarchist now. But I told him that I was a little suspicious that he just wanted to hang out with the cool kids, that he wasn't really dedicated. So we'll have to do some more vetting here. But anyway, no, so Jeff, look, I don't see economics and morality as these big separate things. To me, the world is either a working, beautiful, lovely place, or it's not. So if the economics works, the morality works. If the morality works, the economics works. I just have a hard time separating these things. But I don't find that there's a whole lot of advantage to just sitting around talking about the non-aggression principle, as important as that may be, because it's the beauty and the workability and the communities that emerge within the context of freedom and liberty, within the space of anarchy, that I find is the most compelling things. People need to understand that we are all living basically in a state of anarchism. The state as such doesn't really do anything for us that's much to our advantage really at all. I mean, I'm speaking large generalities, but beautiful things we experience day to day, the people we love, the products we use, the places we go, the people we choose to be around, how we decide to use our time, things we buy, the music we listen to. These are all choices we make, and they're mostly provided within this space of anarchism. These are, which is to say, free people using their own volition and their own property to make the world more spectacular. And to me, to see that for the first time and to have that light go off and go, oh, I get it. This is not a Hobbesian world. This is a beautiful world of anarchism that's becoming ever greater only because of the freedom of will and our own human volition and our capacity to get along with each other and to create spectacular things together. I mean, to me, that's a light that goes off, and once you see it, you never stop seeing it again, and you become committed.
Wonderful. I have a great question from Caroline Devine. She asks, what unique benefits do you think entrepreneurship might offer women and minorities as an alternative to working for an employer?
Yeah, you know, I wonder sometimes about this whole working model that we have that emerged sometime after World War II, where we go into firms and we get we get the W-2 form, and we get wages, and then we get these benefits. Benefits? What, healthcare is a benefit? Well, healthcare and all the mandated benefits that come to us from our corporate culture mostly make us dependent, actually. And I don't think anybody benefits from dependency, really. This is a kind of a corporate structure that emerged sometime after World War II, when the government decided to turn every business firm into a miniature version of itself. So what I'd like to see entrepreneurship do is find people who are being excluded. And yes, that means women and minorities. It means anyone marginalized, anybody excluded, and find ways for them to be included and not excluded. In so many ways, the business culture right now is cartelized and overly regimented. A world of freedom is a world of inclusion. It's a world of fairness. It's a world that's constantly seeking value from every source. And every human being is valuable, no matter what. It's the cartelized economy that excludes people and marginalizes them. It's a world of freedom that finds value in every nook and cranny and enhances that value through greater human association. So for the purposes of women and minorities, there's no better system than human liberty. I think especially about this area of Bitcoin, which I'm sorry to bring that up again. You're probably like, I didn't know I was going to Bitcoin in a minute. But look, a third of humanity right now is not allowed to be included in the internet economy because they don't have credit cards or have access to a bank. Well, what the hell is that? That's insane. That's crazy. We need an economy that includes absolutely everyone who has something valuable to offer or wants to buy something valuable for themselves. And you know what? Everybody does. The idea that we would continue to persist in state-based systems that just arbitrarily exclude people based on race or sex or zip code, you know, or geographic location or anything, it's ridiculous. That's the old world. Let's sweep all that away. A world of freedom is a world of global empowerment for absolutely everyone.
I have one last question. I'm actually going to combine two questions from two people who I think they're asking similar things. A question from Seth Jenks and Bilal Bahadur. Seth asked, or well, I guess I'll start with the other one. Can there be a balance of being an entrepreneur, making the world a better place, and helping those who are in need? And Seth asked, do you think that entrepreneurs should be more involved in the development of third world and developing countries as a way of spreading liberty?
Well, you know, in the developing world, you know, one of the great ironies to me today is that the developing world in many ways is very fortunate because having bypassed the 20th century, they don't have all the horrible public infrastructure cruft that is keeping us behind. When you think about places like in the so-called developed world, I just don't believe the future is here because we've got too much embedded in the public institutions, whether it's education or highways with gigantic debt and huge governments that are tying everything up. And emerging economies, emerging economic environments, you know, they don't have that problem. and they're able to leap immediately from the 19th century to the 21st century. And you know, there's countries in Africa that have very limited electrical service, but absolutely everybody has a smartphone. Think about it. Once you have a smartphone, you've got the world at your fingertips. So I think we have every reason to be extremely optimistic about development in all these emerging economies, and not so much, I would say, in the so-called developed world. We're seeing the world turn upside down right now. I mean, it really is happening. All of our old models are being exploded. I mean, there's many people who believe the Chinese economy is already much larger than the U.S., and I think there's probably some basis for believing that. The world's going to be, the future is going to be very filled with surprises. The high and mighty will be taken low, and the lowly will be exalted. I think this is what free markets are going to be for us. I'm not sure about the first question. I think I answered the second one. What was the first one?
Just how can one be an entrepreneur and help people? I believe. Let me go back and look at it.
Yeah. No, I think. Look, I don't think that these are incompatible, and this is, I guess, my main message here. I mean, to me, to be entrepreneurial is to be about seeking to serve others through acts of human benevolence based on dreams of making the world a better place. And that's pretty much how I would define entrepreneurship. And I'm not just saying that. It's not just an opinion. This is something I've developed by listening and watching and seeing how the world actually works. I know this is not the story you hear, but it's the story that I think more accurately describes the reality all around us. So if that's the last question, I guess I would like to close first of all by thanking you for attending. I know an hour is a lot of time. I appreciate your coming. I'm especially grateful to the SFL for having provided this venue. And it's not just a venue like this. It's just a miracle that I'm able to be, at a seminar. Essentially, we have people from all over the world here tonight. Everything I'm looking at was milked by private enterprise, and our opportunity to be together here tonight was brought to us courtesy of the market economy. So thank you, market, and thank you, SFL, for reinvigorating the liberty-minded agenda, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And I also wanted to thank the Daily Paul Radio, who was broadcasting this webinar live on their stream. For one very quick final question, Bill T asks, what wine are you drinking?
This is brought to me by, it's called Vio Grande. My coworker here got it for me tonight. He apologized that it only cost $9. I don't know why he thought it was a snob. I'll drink a wine of any price. It doesn't matter to me. So,
for our listeners, you might not have noticed Jeffrey was drinking a glass of wine during the webinar. Thank you so much.
I mean, I assume that the SFL doesn't mind that sort of thing. So.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Daily Paul Radio. I hope all of you attendees have a great night, and I thank you so much for joining us here. I hope you enjoyed the webinar as much as we did, Jeff.
Thank you so much again.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.